Hello, 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 hello. Perfect. Perfect. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. A pen would be great. Yeah. Perfect. Thank you. All right.
Have you read the Dalai Lama's book about happiness?
I have not. No.
Oh, I'm gonna send it to you.
Okay. Cool. All right. So we'll get going in about 5 minutes. Good to see you, bro.
What's today's talk?
We're talking about 3D environment generators. So you can make like a video game basically from a prompt. And that technology, which is coming down the line, and some open source news as well. So we're going to do a bit of a deep dive into the 3D image generator, into the.
Like open source models, or like what?
There's been some upgrades to them, and there's been some thinking, especially from Elon, about open source models. So we'll just go through a little bit of that, which I think is interesting, and then we'll talk about the main meat of the meetup is going to be about these 3D world generators. So how they operate, what the technology is behind them, and where they are, because I think that's going to be the next big thing. All right. All right, everyone. So we'll give it maybe 5 more minutes, and then we'll make a start. So yeah. So if you want to be engaged and talk in the meeting, if you want to come and sit in the front row or maybe at the back. All right. So we'll make a bit of a. I think we'll make a bit of a start, and then we'll add more people as they come. I think we're expecting a little bit of a bigger turnout. So this is the weekly AI. So what's that? Yeah. Yeah, I know. So we'll make a start with the introduction round, and then as people come, we'll add them in. So this is the weekly AI event, the weekly AI meetup. So it's an event about the latest news in the world of AI. It is a meeting about the technology. So if we go too far into talking about why AI is going to take over the world, I'm going to try and rein us back in. I would also ask if you want to take a call, if you could take it in one of the meeting rooms or in another space so that we are not distracted and that we talk one at a time. We try and keep talking between ourselves to a minimum just so that we can stay focused on what we're talking about. And obviously, if you want to stay engaged in the meeting and participate, then feel free to come and sit at the front. So we'll start, as we always do, with a bit of an introduction round. So I'm Harry. I started life as a tech journalist, talking about tech, writing for The Guardian, and of late also writing for The Decoder. I'm now presenting an AI news show on the G-Core podcast. G-Core is a cloud computing service. And I also have an AI consultancy as well. So I go around, help businesses implement AI in their systems, look at what they're doing, and help them use AI to grow and do more with their systems. Do you want to introduce yourself, my man? Do you want a microphone? Let's give you a mic. Yeah. It's a really good idea.
Hello everyone, my name is Zach. I have my own AI consulting business, but for commercial brokers and residential as well, and real estate. I've been doing it about 2 months, so very exciting time.
Good to hear that. Good to hear there's another AI consultant in the room. So yeah.
Everyone's a man.
Apart from Sean,
My name is Sean. I am a news publisher, and we use a lot of AI in our business, and that's the primary objective.
Hello everybody, my name is Kareem. I'm an AI enthusiast. I was engineering, and I'm here just to learn more about AI and just get updated with what's happening.
Love it. Should we go this way? Good to see you again.
Hello, my name is Eric. I'm a 3D graphics designer, and I'm using AI since it.
Love it.
Hello.
Should we pass the mic back? Good to see you.
My name is Ersh, AI enthusiast.
Hi, my name is Angela. I just recently started vibe coding, and I went to a hackathon last week, and it was super fun, and we all made stuff. So.
I love it.
Hi, my name is Anu. I do not work in AI, but I do use AI. My work as a creative consultant and designer.
Love it.
Hi, my name is Azdin. I'm a software engineer. I work in applied research for a vector database, which is a tool using AI to build AI apps, etc. So,
yeah. I think it's been a while since we've brought up the term vector database. I think there was a time last year when that's all we talked about. So how times move on. So good to hear vector database is represented. Anyone want to introduce themselves, or are we done for today? All right. So yeah, thank you everyone for coming. So I have a list here actually of 9 people who registered, or I have a free gift for them. So if your name is, you're Ashley, Kareem, Mabina, Penny, Johan, Abdel, Hakim, Dimitri, Lauren, or Des Ilava, I've got a cookie for you. So if you want to come and grab this. So this is to promote Upton and Thomas's podcast. Upton is a big influencer. You know Upton, of course. So he just started a podcast with Thomas. So to get people interested, he's giving out free cookies, and he's got a little QR code on there to subscribe. So yeah, feel free to come and get this if you want, or we can you can pick them up on your way out. Up to you. Yeah, cookie for everyone. So for 9 people, yeah, Dan cookies, yeah.
What amount of calories do you want?
If you put it like that, yeah. Okay, so let's go on with the show. Let's talk about some AI news. So today's session is going to be talking about, first of all, some open source things, and then second of all, some 3D world generation. So we're going to be talking about the latest developments in open source models. Guys, do you mind if you're going to stay here? Can we make sure that no one's like talking over each other, just so that I can hear with the meeting? So yeah, let's talk about some open source and 3D world generation today. So we're going to talk about how open source AI models have been updated, and we're also going to be talking about some 3D environment generators. So we've had obviously image to video. Now we've had text to video as well, and then we've had VO3 come out, which obviously incorporates the ability to generate sound and image all together in one package. So we've seen the way that technology is going. I think the next roadmap for this technology is going to be creating basically environments, almost like creating a video game that you can actually walk amongst and interact with. So we're going to be talking about that today. So the first story before we get onto that is we're going to be talking about some open source things. So Grok 2 has open sourced. So are we good? Is everything okay? Yeah. So Grok 2 have open sourced their model. So the reason this is significant is if we think about it, last week we talked in depth a lot about GPT-OSS, OpenAI's new model that is open source. And it's a 120 billion parameter model. So we've seen some of the big players actually start to put out their open source model. Previously, the only open source players on the field were really Mistral and Llama, Meta's Llama. Those were the two big models that people would go to. OpenAI had not really got a play on this. And of course, Elon has been building his own version Grok that he just put out with XAI. But what OpenAI have done is that they did not put out they did not, for instance, open source GPT-4. They didn't open source GPT-5. So they haven't open sourced any of their previous models. They actually went away and built their own model to open source it. What Elon is doing is open sourcing his previous models. So every time he brings out a new model, he's obviously going to open source the previous one. So if we go and we look at the tweet that he put out, it's quite interesting. So this is the tweet that Elon tweeted, and kind of to everyone's sort of surprise, he posted a Hugging Face link, which usually you only see Zuck doing that. So the XAI Grok 2.5 model, he's called it 2.5 because he says this is basically the very best version of this before they moved to Grok 3, which was our best model last year, is now open source. And he says, interestingly, Grok 3 will be made open source in about 6 months. So instead of going away and creating a new model to placate the open source community, he's actually, every time he brings out a new model, his plan is to open source the previous one, which is very, very interesting because it suggests that he wants the open source community to get better. If OpenAI had open sourced GPT-4, I think, as somebody pointed out last week, first of all, it would be completely impractical. It's a 1 trillion parameter. It's a 1 trillion parameter model, we believe. So imagine trying to run that, a 1 trillion parameter model that on open source. So that means you've got to probably get about 100 GPUs, or you've probably got to build your own data center to be able to do that. This is a model which is about 216, I believe, 230 billion parameters. They haven't officially said the amount of parameters that's on it, but we estimate that from the weights and what's been put out on Hugging Face. So how does that break down? You need about 8 H100 GPUs to be able to run this thing effectively. So if you're spinning up this on your own server, that means you've got to rent 8 of these GPUs. So your cost of running it is going to be quite high, but because it's so big, it means there's going to be a lot that you can do with this. It's really, really interesting, and of course, Grok has a reputation for being the model that is, let's say, slightly less woke. And for being what Elon described as being the truth-seeking AI. He wants it to be simply returning the truth. It isn't really sort of trained, so there's not as many safety parameters on it. So open sourcing it adds to that even more. Suggests he's putting it out into the world. Really interesting. So we've had Grok 2, as we said, some stats: 269 billion total parameters, approximately, so around that mark. 128k context window. Every kind of basic open source model that comes out, it seems to be 128k context window, which is really specific. So I'd love for someone to explain that one day as to why it's always 128k. Yeah, that would make sense, right? We 64, 128, 250, 256. But then why is Claude 200k? And why do we have a million? So hardware requirements, you need about 8 GPUs. So that's the first bit of open source news. The other interesting bit is DeepSeek version 3.1. So we've all kind of forgotten about DeepSeek. DeepSeek had this massive moment. I've forgotten when it was. I think it was around October, November, where it just disrupted everything. Everyone was paying attention to it. And I think for a while, DeepSeek was the #1 app on the iPhone App Store. It was getting more downloads than ChatGPT, and everyone was downloading it because it was supposedly cheaper and free. Definitely not uncensored, of course, being a Chinese model. I think we had some fun where we were asking it about Tiananmen Square. They've upgraded their model. And what's really interesting about this is the benchmarks on this model are similar to their reasoning model. In fact, they outperform their reasoning model, R1. So we see now that instead of just having this separation between chat models and reasoning models and non-reasoning models, that we're seeing that integration. And again, you see how the market is moving. You see OpenAI comes out with GPT-5, which does auto routing. So it chooses the amount of thinking that gets done. It chooses for you if you need reasoning, if you need to go away and do that kind of longer thinking. And then we see that DeepSeek comes out and that they upgrade their model as well, and they essentially do the same thing. So it's got improved reasoning capabilities, a lot better benchmark performance, and it outperforms their dedicated reasoning model on numerous benchmarks. And this came out around the same time as Grok 2. So if we're kind of thinking in terms of the market and the way things are shifting and the way the technology is developing, this seems to be the big shift. Of course, Claude has had this kind of in it for a while. You can just press a button and you can turn on thinking, and then every time it will ask it. But I wonder what Claude's response will be to this. I mean, we haven't had a situation where you can ask it and it goes away and makes the decision about whether you need thinking or not. Kind of has that built in. So yeah, lots going on in the open source community. Does anyone want to chime in on this and sort of talk about this? I guess it'd be interesting to hear Sean's perspective about open source, given that, of course, you use AI for text a lot. Have you thought about switching to open source? Does any of this interest you, or are you still sticking with your current setup here? I'm going to try this one instead. Oh. Yeah, when you put it down, it's
putting it away so we wouldn't get confused.
You want to try that one? Yeah.
This one better?
No. But this one.
This one?
There we go.
What's right?
Yeah.
GPU time is really expensive, so the open source models are just too expensive for us to run. It's actually cheaper to run it in OpenAI on their cloud services. And in theory, OpenAI isn't training their models on our API inputs, but who knows? So I don't know. I don't really see the advantage with using open source tools. Although I guess heaps of regulated industries and people like that can't send their data up to the cloud. But in my instance, it's news stories, so it's not.
Yeah, exactly. I guess if you had sort of client, if you were working in an industry that was more heavily regulated and compliance, I think one of the cool things about the open source model from OpenAI is OpenAI just has that reputation of being the market leader, and yet until now, most companies weren't actually able to use it. So them bringing it out says they can use it. I don't know whether if you were a compliant company, the first model you would, in fact, you wouldn't. The first model you wouldn't reach for is DeepSeek or Grok. Those are probably two of the least models you'd want to pick.
How open source are the three? So DeepSeek has got weights that are open source, but Grok 2 is fully open source. The actual software, the code and the
No. So that's a really great question. I'm using the word open source as a metonym for open weights. So Grok is open weights. It's not open source. So they haven't put everything out there. Hence, I wasn't able to give you a definitive answer about the number of parameters. I gave you an estimate that's based on other users using it and what is in the Hugging Face. But yeah, not everything is out there. Grok 2.5 also comes with this license as well, which says you can't use it to train any other AI models. And I don't think you're allowed to use it if you're earning like a profit of over $1 million or something like that. And you have to cite the fact that you've used XAI. You have to say powered by XAI. So really interesting. And of course, that like caveat came about because of course DeepSeek were using ChatGPT's models. They think to basically they distill them and then train their models. So you've got a couple of $1 million lying around in the bank. You might be tempted to go out and say, I'll just train my own foundational model based on Grok 2.5. So now, of course, you can't do that. You'd be breaking your the terms of service. So you are licensed. It's an Apache 2.0 license, I think. So you can't simply just go out and do whatever you want with this model. So yeah, you're right to query that. I suppose it's not truly open source. Yeah. Anyone else want to chime in on this? Or open source? Yeah. Anyone else got any opinions, any thoughts on open source versus closed source? Is everybody familiar with what open source is, or am I talking a different language to people? Yeah. I relate. Okay, should we move on and talk about some of these 3D image generators? I know people are very interested in this. So yeah, I used Gamma AI to make this presentation. So don't know why it's decided that Blueberries are have anything to do with these models. So we're talking about Genie 3, which is Google's DeepMind's next generation world model. It promises enhanced 3D environment generation. So these are what are becoming known as LWMs, large world models. So rather than large language models, we have large world models. And that is the concept, the idea that you can generate a very realistic 3D environment. So as we know, up until now, some of these image generators have had such an issue with physics and space. I think even when we demoed Mari is the model of Mix. And so amazing achievement to create a model. He was coming quite regularly to this meetup. I think he's in San Francisco at the moment. But when we demoed his, we were seeing some issues with people sort of falling over and things not quite being right. This is an attempt to solve that, to create worlds. And as we're going to see, like some of the use cases for it are going to be, first of all, creating a virtual tour of any space from a single photograph is probably going to be possible. And then it's going to obviously make creating video games a lot easier and creating interactive environments. But beyond that, it's also going to create modeling things very much easier. So if you want to run experiments and you want to model things in a certain environment, this is going to be the technology that really pushes the boundaries. So to me, I think this is one of the technologies which is kind of going to be the foundation cement kind of level. Once it's been perfected, I think we're going to see a lot of scientific developments on top of this because of the work that's been done to actually get this done, the work that is being done behind the scenes. So that we can see what I'm actually talking about, let's have a quick demo of Genie 3. There are several models that are available. Obviously, Genie 3 is Google DeepMind's model, so they are obviously the leader. And if Google DeepMind is working on something, generally, that means that the technology is sort of at pace, improving very fast. We've got Mirage 2, which is the revolutionary which is out now. We can actually use that. And we've also got another one from World Labs. But let's have a look at Genie 3. And then we're going to talk a little bit about what this technology is and break it down. See if we can get this full screen. Nope. Let's turn it up. So this is Google Genie 3 from Google DeepMind.
What you're seeing are not games or videos. They're worlds. Each one of these is an interactive environment generated by Genie 3, a new frontier for world models. With Genie 3, you can use natural language to generate a variety of worlds and explore them interactively, all with a single text prompt. Let's see what it's like to spend some time in a world. Genie 3 has real-time interactivity, meaning that the environment reacts to your movements and actions. You're not walking through a pre-built simulation. Everything you see here is being generated live as you explore. And Genie 3 has world memory. That's why environments like this one stay consistent. World memory even carries over into your actions. For example, when I'm painting on this wall, my actions persist. I can look away and generate other parts of the world. But when I look back, the actions I took are still there. And Genie 3 enables promptable events, so you can add new events into your world on the fly. Something like another person, or transportation, or even something totally unexpected. You can use Genie to explore real-world physics and movement, and all kinds of unique environments. You can generate worlds with distinct geographies, historical settings, fictional environments, and even other characters. We're excited to see how Genie 3 can be used for next-generation gaming and entertainment. And that's just the beginning. Worlds can help with embodied research, training robotic agents before working in the real world, or simulating dangerous scenarios for disaster preparedness and emergency training. World models can open new pathways for learning, agriculture, manufacturing, and more. We're excited to see how Genie 3's world simulation can benefit research around the world.
So there you go. So it is not out yet. That's the first thing to note. So you cannot go away and play with this. It's just a video. But clearly the fact that they put a video out like this is them essentially signposting what is to come, which I think is really interesting. So this is one of the models. There is another one that is out now that we can play with. It's obviously not as good as this. We're going to have a little bit of a play with it later. But I'm curious to hear people's thoughts and people's opinions on this. Because to me, this just seems like it's going to hugely impact the world. And in a year from now, this is what we're going to be here talking about. Sean.
I mean, you're writing a book, so
yep.
Would this be something that that you might use to create the world of your book, and then you can create multiple videos or stories?
Yeah, I mean, for me, the technology moves so fast. It's like when you are thinking, wow, I can do this with AI to enhance the storytelling experience, something kind of new comes out before you've even got to grips with it. But yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is amazing. I think I have an MA in history as well. Like my background is in historical research. And when I was at university, some of the researchers in the department had gone out and made a 3D model, a reconstruction of a chapel in Westminster. Now this might sound like okay, why did they do that? But this was actually the room of the original House of Commons. It burnt down in 1834. So they'd gone through all the different documents and then modeled how it was over the years. And they actually managed to get some new historical information from doing that. Because in doing that, they could see, okay, like how many chairs were there in the room? So then how many MPs were there? And you can uncode all kinds of things by doing this, doing historical inquiry. But this whole research and this whole process, I think it took years. It was a really, really long time, because they were obviously having to make this 3D model, go out and do the research and put everything together. And it was a walkable environment. You could actually walk around. I think there was another project as well for the town of St. Andrews where someone had done this. But the way I see this going is like it will unlock a lot of historical research, and I think for video games and for historical fiction, it could be really interesting because you could make an environment which can help you understand what it was like to live at that time or in that place at that time in a way that is more difficult to conceive from just a photograph.
And one other question: do you think you can export from these type of tools and then get a professional 3D expert to clean it up and do the things that you want?
Yeah, I mean, I would imagine that's the way that it goes, right? Like, if you think about how we use the video generators and the image generators, you could do that now, right? You could go away and make an image and say, "This is basically the thing that I want. Can you go away and clean this up and make this better, upscale it, or add some details in?" So, yeah, I would imagine that's the way that it would go. And also, I also imagine that this version that we get is not going to be the same version that researchers get. So yeah, for fiction and for storytelling, it's obviously amazing. For historical inquiry, I also think it's amazing, and also just for as they themselves point out, just for creating an environment that you can actually test things in and like map things out in different scenarios about how they would play out. That understanding of physics is just, I think, incredible. Did anyone else want to chime in on this before we talk about some of the technology that's behind it and we look at some of the other models? All right, let's go on then. Let's have a look at some of the other models. So what we'll do is we'll look at Mirage 2 and then we'll break down the differences between them in the technology, the different approaches that are being taken to actually create these. So this is Mirage 2, and we're going to have a bit of a demo of this later. So this allows users to turn sketches and photos into interactive game worlds. So what we might do is have someone take a picture of us and then create an interactive world out of it, which could be really cool. So Mirage 2 is by Dynamic Labs, and it's the latest version of their generative game world engine. So you can upload your own images, sketches, or photos and turn them into interactive game worlds. The engine also lets players change the game in real time by typing in commands, and worlds can be saved and shared. So Mirage 2 makes clear technical games over its predecessor, but obviously it doesn't have the precise controls and visual stability, and that's something that Genie 3 seems to be far ahead in. So this is, I guess, like a kind of a light version of this, I would say. But the key difference is that they've put their bundle out right now, and you can't access Genie 3. So let's have a look at this. This I thought was really, really cool. This is a children's crayon drawing. So this is a really creative use of it. And this is obviously coming from their Twitter account themselves. So this is not this is obviously going to be, really good. They're probably, game the environment a little bit. But this is, I think, exceptionally cool. So imagine you've got a kid and they've drawn this at school, and then this is what you can do with it. Fully interactive. It's a good point, yeah. So this is kind of veered a little bit away from the initial drawing. It's kind of imagining it and sort of making stuff up now. We can look at this one. So this is the original picture, obviously from brushstrokes to images. So we'll. No, I don't think that's the right one. Yep.
As time goes by, it gets worse.
Yeah. Exactly. That's a really good point, and you see that with the video generators as well. Like the longer, this is what we call back propagation through time. So we're going to talk a little bit about how these work in a minute, the technology. But I believe this one is built on an autoregressive transform model, and as we know, one of the limitations of transformer architecture is that the longer you allow the models to go on, the further away from their source image they become. But yeah, really interesting the way that it's imagining it. So as I said, we're going to have a demo of this later. It is available, and you can do cool things like you can jump, you can sort of sword fight with people, I think, and you can fight. So there's actual computer game sort of actions that have been built into it. There's also World Labs as well, which have got a spatial foundational model, and this is founded by Phi-Phi Lee for 3D scene generation, and it extracts deep cues and spatial relationships. So there's essentially three kind of big players in this space at the moment. Obviously, Google DeepMind being the main model. So I want to talk a little bit about the technology and how this actually works. So we're going to do a little bit of a deep dive into the different approaches that they've used to actually make this. So we might get a little bit technical, but I'm going to try my best to keep everybody coming along. So feel free to ask questions if you don't understand everything that I'm saying. We'll try and work it out. So there are essentially two kind of revolutionary approaches to this. So Google Genie 3 are using auto-regressive world models, and they're doing frame-by-frame generation, but they also have created a learned physics engine. So there is this thought within the AI world that essentially, if you do enough reinforcement learning and you kind of use brute force to just keep asking the model to just keep doing the same thing over and over again and learn from its mistakes, then eventually it will learn how to do anything. There's this kind of feeling that that's what you can do with reinforcement learning. So in the AI space, there are these sort of two competing fields. There's one that says it needs very, very specific high-level instructions, and you need to give it access to tools, and it needs to have all these things to be able to complete the output that you want. And there's this other mode of thinking that says if you do enough reinforcement learning, and if you get the model to do the same thing over and over and over again enough times, then it will just figure out what the output is that you want, provided you've given it clear instructions on the output that you want. It will just be able to do that. So Google Genie 3 is going down that, I guess you would say, that route, I suppose. They're creating a physics engine where it understands physics to some degree. And it's been sort of video trained on edited. The World Labs method is doing something called 3D Gaussian splatting. So if anyone knows anything about diffusion models and diffusion models are the fundamental technology behind some of these image generation models. With these, you do a sort of a denoising process and a noising process where we're essentially trying to do things in a kind of way that's like a pixel by pixel way. And it's kind of doing a similar thing. It's essentially sort of splatting out pixels into 3D space and rendering them. And it's using traditional graphic rendering processes as well through an AI-learned positioning. This way is more computationally efficient with explicit 3D structures. And as you can imagine, Google Genie 3 way is hugely expensive. And this might be one of the reasons why they haven't sort of released it to the public. The more brute force that you do with these models, the more compute power you need, and obviously the more training data that you need. And this is kind of one of the pressure points of the AI industry. It's just gobbling up more and more GPU power. So yeah, 3D Gaussian splatting. I did my best to try and explain this, which is World Labs sort of breakthrough technology. So you have a kind of a position, an orientation, and the appearance. You have the RGB values, but they have spherical harmonics. So you're not just talking about the RGB is like the red, green, blue. So when you are extracting the color code of images to give to a designer, and you have the hashtag, and it's a unique code. This is this. But it has a spherical harmonics to it as well. And there's a transparency level to it as well for realistic blending and occlusion. So we have these two really sort of different approaches to the model. And then we have the auto-regressive world models, as I was telling you about. So Google's DeepMind's Genie 3 generates world frame by frame, learns physics from massive video datasets rather than explicit 3D representations. So the key thing here is that it has a kind of a physics learning, has a neural network in it, which can learn realistic behavior patterns from video training, data, gravity, fluid dynamics, light, reflection. So it's using the transformer technology, which is essentially a technology for learning and spotting patterns, to try to understand physics for a better world. And it has real-time interaction as well, 50 millisecond latency, and it also has a memory system in it as well, and advanced memory mechanisms which can track the objects across time, which prevents hallucination drift with 1 minute temporal consistency. So to Sean's point, usually we only see a couple of seconds. So 1 minute is really, really, I think, the edge of what we can do with video models as well. We asked Mix this question, and he said that. He says he thinks that you could do a minute, but why would you really want to do that? And in video generation, if you think about it, you don't really have a frame that lasts longer than 60 seconds in a minute. With this, obviously, the consistency is more important because that environment has to stay the same. But a minute is really what they can kind of do with this. So I got Claude to sort of draw up a little bit of a table for us so that we can sort of see the main differences between the two approaches. Yeah. For generating the video, VO3 is, I think, 8 seconds. I think Kling 10 seconds. I think Sora was 20 seconds when it came out. And I think what Mix was telling us was that behind the scenes, professionally, there's models that are 60 seconds. If you have access to them, if you really, really want them. But the models that we have access to are not that, don't go up to 60 seconds. But it was really saying there's a kind of a limitation on 60 seconds. That's really the max that you can get. Most of the big players are not going to release it because of the compute power and the cost of it and that it would have. So this is like the key differences, I suppose, just to kind of list them, which is World Labs is using 3D Gaussian splatting, has a static seed reconstruction. They've got a lot of funding, $230 million of funding. That's more than Mix has got for his model at the moment, and obviously it costs $100 million to train a GPT-4. So video models are expensive, and obviously 3D world generation models are going to be a tip above there, even more expensive. So you can see the way this is going. As we're developing, the cost of things is sort of increasing all the time. These companies are needing more money. I don't think it'll be long before some of these 3D world generators are going to be needing like $1 trillion in investment to do some of these things. I think we're probably about 18 months away from that happening. And then if they're raising $1 trillion, then what's their valuation going to look like? So it's a crazy world. It's so often now you see companies valued at $1 billion, which you didn't even a few years ago. So it's really interesting. Mirage 2, by the way, is an independent startup. So you've got limited navigation with the kind of World Labs model, but with Mirage 2, it's more interactive. Yeah, so I made some notes here about Gaussian splitting generation and physics and consistency, and real-time rendering is part of it as well. Yeah, so the main point is that Genie 3 is using this auto-regressive. They're using transformer architecture with a learned physics engine and a visual memory system. And I guess World Labs approach is using more of the technology that we would find in the image generators, or certainly a more sophisticated version of it. So it's very interesting the way that this is going. I take, I guess, Billy's point. Billy was the chief software engineer at Visa, and he just sort of sold his startup with Alan for quite a serious amount of money in AI Recruit. He came and did a talk, and I think one of the questions that was asked or that he said was, okay, if we're going to build a startup, what kind of things should we be thinking about? What kind of things should you be thinking about if you want to make a lot of money in the AI world? And he said, and I agree with him, you can see the way the world is going. You can sort of see the end point of the technology, but you kind of need to predict the way that it's going to go in 1 year and build something kind of in a way before everyone else does, get it to a point, and then you want to seek investment for it to sell it. So I would suggest that I'm giving you some of the cheat codes here and telling you that I think within 1 year, this is what we'll be talking about, in the same way that, in November we were talking about MCP, and 18 months ago we were talking about image generators being able to do image to video and being able to do music and sound in one as well. I think that there's going to be so many applications that can be built on top of this. I think not just video games. I think that's the obvious one, but I mean, think of business use cases as well. Think of how you could use this for, I don't know, mapping out seating plans in the office, for emulating different environments in an office and how they work, for emulating maybe even very small things like how different color schemes that are in an office actually generate different responses from employees. So I think the business use case for this are huge, and I think it would be a very smart idea to start thinking about these now and what you could start building with these. Did anyone else want to have a discussion about this and jump into this before we move on to some demos with this? Sean, yeah. Is the mic? I think
maybe it's the way I hold it.
Yeah.
I was going to ask about your posts on LinkedIn and YouTube.
Yeah.
Are you still video generating them, and are they comparing with the previous ones? And could you see yourself using maybe a virtual set or something?
It's a really interesting question. So it's really funny. I have some studio time now because I'm making videos for Gcore. I actually had some studio time left, so I thought, well, I might as well do real shorts. We put them out, and they perform really badly compared to the AI generated ones. So I think some of them only got 10 views, and the AI generated ones I was putting out were maxing out at like 2,000 views. So now we're probably going to go back to using AI generated ones just because there's better views with it. I don't know what it is about them. I think maybe it's the more control that you have over them. But I was going to the studio and reading an auto cue. I guess for some reason the algorithm just seems to favor them, but it does mean I can outsource that entirely to Rio, my assistant. So yeah, interesting. But to your question about could you use these in some of the models, I feel like these would be more for long form. I couldn't imagine that you would need to make use of a model like this for short form content. I imagine if you wanted to put yourself in I imagine if you wanted to create a history video and you wanted to be narrating, the history of, I don't know, the Middle Ages or something, or an important battle, that would be a really interesting thing to have, because you could combine this with a Laura of yourself, a low rank adaptation, a clone of yourself, put it in the model, and then you've got a really accurate historical video. Does anyone else want to chime in on this, or have I blown people's minds completely? Villa, I wonder whether you had any thoughts on how some of this might be used in like a business setting or in a kind of an office setting. No thoughts? Okay, no worries. All right, well, why don't we move on to have a demo about it then, if no one's got any thoughts. I feel like I've just blown people's minds with all this technology. So let's have a demo of Mirage 2. We could talk about it, and then we could talk about some of the technical challenges with this as well. What is so hard about it, and why is this so difficult to sort of come into to existence? So this is Mirage 2. So we go, mirage2.org.
So both of these you think are more scenery and point of view, and not really a film, like a studio or something for a short film.
No, I think also this one has quite a lot of limitations as well. So let's open the official demo. So you'll see when we use it that it sort of crashes, and obviously you can upload an image. So yeah, I wondered if somebody wanted to take a picture of the room and then airdrop it to me, and I can't, of course, because my phone is filming. If someone wants to do that, I thought it could be, take a picture of do you want to take a picture of everyone, and then we'll put it in the model and we'll see or the room. We'll see if we can make a 3D video game of the BWork AI Founders Meeting. So it should be, I think, Harry's MacBook Air. Okay. Do you want to just airdrop it to me? So you don't need to. Yeah, just take a picture and airdrop it to me. Yeah, you got it.
I went to Harry Potter in Singapore a couple of weeks ago. I could send you a couple of photos from there.
Sure, yeah, let's do it. Let's see if we can get a realistic Harry Potter. Do they have it in Singapore now as well? I know they had it in Japan, but they built one in Singapore as well.
Yeah, it's called Visions of Magic. It's quite fun.
So it's not official Harry Potter. It's just
No, it really is.
okay.
It's
Yeah.
universal.
Okay, interesting. Harry, yeah, send it. Harry's MacBook. I got it.
That might be mine.
Yeah, we've got both. Save to downloads. Yeah, let's just upload it. Where is it? Where is it? So we might have to come back to this. It's taking a little while to actually process the image. Let me see if I can. I did demo this earlier and took a little bit of screen recording and it took in case this happened. So in the meantime, let's get a screen recording up. All right, so this is a demo I recorded of this earlier. So it's not the image that Sean has sent us. We're just waiting for that to load. So we might have to come back to it at the end. But you can see the way that this works, which is that you upload an image. So this is not very exciting. This is a picture of essentially the outside of an office from Google Street View. So we'll just skip this part. So now it allows you to basically navigate wherever you want to navigate. You can move around and you can see there's people walking in and out of the doors. I think you can prompt whatever you want. It's a bit difficult to control. As you can see, you kind of zoom in and then you reach a point where you can't really zoom in any further. And it's a bit difficult to move it around. See if we can get to do it again. And it takes a while. Sometimes it takes a while to actually load these images, but you can see it's a little bit, what's the word? A little bit kind of broken, a little bit difficult to navigate. It doesn't look as smooth as Google's Genie Labs 3. Obviously, this is just a sort of a simulation, and you can see at this point it's kind of gone into this sort of really weird sort of graphic version of it. It almost feels like you're in a PS2 video game at this point, doesn't it? Like, so. Right, let's go back and let's see if Sean's image has loaded. It looks like it's still processing. So see if we can start another one. So you can see everyone's kind of jumping on this now. You've got to wait for a server, and there's estimated time of 3 minutes. Yeah, it's you can get the general idea of this one though, is that it's not as visual, and it seems to take the image very literally. I would say take the image very literally, and you can sort of see the cardboard blocks of it. You can't necessarily move around in the same way you can with Genie 3. So let's talk a little bit again about the technology then, while we're waiting for this to load, to see if it loads. This was a really great idea, but obviously we've got to wait. So one of the things that I'm keen to come back to is this idea of what are the limitations of this, what are these models. I've lost my presentation. I've somehow lost my presentation, so give me a minute to get it back.
You use Gamma to generate it?
I did, yeah. I had a little bit of an experiment with Gamma to see how well it did compared to ChatGPT's agent. I think it did okay, it didn't do amazingly, but it takes the information, it sort of outputs what you want. So.
And what was your source document? Did you start with like a Google Drive?
Yeah, I gave it all my notes. So I go away and obviously I research this. I look at all the different articles, and then things that I'm interested in, I do a deeper dive into. I try and think about any questions that people might have about some of the technology or what people might want to know, and try to make sure I'm well versed on that. So I have a whole bunch of notes. And then I just gave them to Gamma, and it made this into a presentation. And I obviously picked a template that was vaguely aligned with my brand colors. ChatGPT will make you one with your actual logo in the actual brand colors that are your RGB, but it doesn't always get the spacing right, and sometimes text can be too small and it tries to cram too much on. So this one does a better job, I would say, of formatting, but it doesn't quite give you all the customization options that using the ChatGPT agent does. So these are some of the technical challenges that sort of need to be overcome to make this work. And I really do think it's worth going over these, because I feel like too often that we have this technology come out and we then get used to it and we think about it as being easy, and we start to complain about it and bitch complain without actually thinking about some of the huge amount of fundamental challenges that need to be overcome to actually get to this place. I find that happens a lot with the image generators and the video generators as well, and it's really good when we have the engineers here to actually talk us through some of the challenges that they've gone through to actually get to a point where the technology is commercially viable. So first of all, we have this consistency problem. So explicit 3D Gaussians obviously maintain properties over time, and Google has tried to create a long-term memory for its autoregressive generation. Autoregressive generation is similar to what is used in neural networks in this technology, and long-term memory is a fundamental problem to it that needs to be overcome. We see that in text models as well. You've probably encountered this when your chat window gets too full up of text and you get timed out and you have to set up a new chat window. It's essentially the same problem of long-term memory. So this is something that Google is obviously trying to solve and needs to be solved for something that's this complex. Then we have the problem of physics. So we have this issue where anyone who's using image or video generator knows that it cannot compute real worlds very easily. People do weird things. If you prompt it to say have somebody at the gym doing squats or doing weights or something, you'll get some very weird outputs and some things which are just not gravitationally possible. So obviously it needs to account for that. And so Google have tried to account for that with some physics learning from video training data. They've essentially tried to create a specific model that actually doesn't just map the world, but actually has a fundamental understanding of the laws of physics, and to be able to apply those when it's thinking about generating the model. So again, that's their attempt to try and solve it. And then you have this interaction problem. So users input maps, user inputs map to camera movements in 3D space. So again, when we had the big meetup and we had the investors here from Silicon Valley and Billy was here, they were talking about the way in which text isn't always the best way to interact with video models and with image generators. I mean, it's fundamentally not the best experience because there's a limitation to what you're doing. You're having to actually describe what you're doing, and there comes a point where you can't describe it anymore, where you're having to write huge long paragraphs to actually explain something which is very simple. To explain all the details in words, there's a limitation to it. So Google's answer to this, Google's trying to solve this problem by using inputs as conditioning signals for frame generation. So essentially, you put in some inputs, and there is they are sort of converted. So there's something that goes on in the back end where it's converting that text. It's adding things to it to try to make it consistent. And then of course you have this big problem of the computational problem. This is a big problem, which I think is going to start affecting us more and more, which is that, people say, is the winner in the AI race going to simply be the country or the business that has the most amount of access to computational power, GPUs, and also on top of that, power sources as well. So one might look at China and think if we were just measuring it on that basis, that China would obviously win the AI race because they have more, better power grids, better access to power. What they increasingly don't have, which we might come on to at a later part of the meeting, is access to GPUs because the US is imposing export controls on them. So it's a big problem, and it's not only a problem in terms of compute, it's also a finance problem as well, because you've got to make these things commercially viable. And if they're costing so much, the average consumer on the street is not going to pay to cover the costs of this kind of power. So something has to be done to either make these models more efficient in terms of the power that they use. So World Labs is trying to use efficient Gaussian rasterization with GPU parallelization. So it's using two GPUs at the same time, as I understand. And Google is obviously going for this optimized transformer architectures with hardware acceleration. But I would posit that Google's probably spending a lot more, has the ability to spend a lot more money than World Labs does, and probably is spending a huge amount of money. And that is perhaps one of the reasons why they haven't actually released it to the public, because it's probably just way too expensive at the moment for them to just put it loose in the wild. So you can see that these are really the big four. Of course, there were other problems as well, but these are problems which are kind of endemic, really, as a whole within the AI world. Obviously, the consistency problem is something that's kind of limited to image and video generation models. But these are some of the things that need to be overcome, and obviously are trying to be overcome for these models to be actually released in the wild to everybody. And these are some of the big problems that people in the research labs are obviously trying to solve. And it's also one of the reasons why these guys are being paid huge, vast amounts of money. You've seen all these headlines about Meta paying people, hundreds of millions of pounds in some cases to poach people. So I guess, the fundamental part of this, I guess, before we open it up to discussion, is the future is interactive. So, these are breakthrough technologies, and they're going to increase the way that we have this accessibility revolution. I think complex 3D world generation, performance breakthroughs, and they're going to have an impact, I think, on the way the world plays out. I certainly think they're going to have an impact on kind of robotics as well. Robotics is something that we rarely touch on and rarely talk about, but it is happening. And having a real world simulation, having a physics engine is obviously really, really important. Particularly as well, I think, to things like self-driving cars. So the real world application of this is going to be really interesting, and I think this will help with that. Did anyone else have any questions on this before we sort of move on and talk about other things?
How does the demo go?
Let's have a look. Yeah. All right, so we've got some we've got some server time, so let's have a play. So this is one of the pre-built ones. I think it didn't load your image. We can try again in a minute and come back to it. Nope. Nope. It's not going to have it. Yeah.
You see that Runway ML came out with a world thing as well? It's called Game World.
I haven't seen that. No. Yeah, send that to me. That could be really interesting to see. Maybe we can bring that up and look into it in a minute. But the Runway have been doing some really interesting stuff, right? They've got a model where you can actually you can act out a scene, and then they will overlay the acting with an image. So which is really, really cool, and kind of map you out. I think it's called Runway Alph, ALEPH. So or Runway Act 2. There's Act 2 and Alph, and Alph allows you to edit some of the videos. So you can upload it. You can upload a real life video, and you can edit it using some of these tools, which is really cool. Yeah, I'm not sure if this is going to work. It says estimated wait time 2 minutes, down from 3 minutes. So we'll keep coming back to this and see if it lets us have a play with this. But this is Mirage 2. So demo.dynamicslabs.ai, completely free, with only limited time availability though, of course. Okay, so they're not going to let you just play on this for hours and hours and hours and use up all of their GPU power. I'm sure they wouldn't be very happy. So you are time limited on this. Did anyone else want to have any thoughts? Anyone thoughts on this in general? On the, I guess the LWMs, I guess we call them. No, no one got anything to say. Let's accept the.
This is the decoder link.
Okay.
It's from June, but it's
yeah.
similar.
Okay, let's have a look. Oh, interesting. Game Worlds next week.
Yeah, it is from 6 weeks ago or something.
Yeah, and it says next week, and yet I haven't heard them any follow up on it. So I wonder if they actually brought this out. I guess we'll have to have a look. To use their data for training AI models and explore ways to apply its technology in game development. Let's have a look at the video and see what they've been up to. Oh.
Ready Player One. Runway is releasing a game engine, so you can't even get mad at it.
We can change the quality.
That means we're using Game Changer in the title this time around. Now, is this a full 3D open world sandbox? No, it is not. But it is really interesting, a lot of fun, and planting the seeds of what's to come in generative AI. Also, Runway have updated their references feature, so we'll take a look at that as well. All right, grab your controller, hit up, up, down, down, left, right, left, right. Well, you finish the rest of the comments. So yeah, this was a little unexpected. Runway are releasing a game engine. Or, maybe it shouldn't be a surprise, as Runway CEOs Christopher Valenzuela quite often messages the idea of world models. And this has been baked into Runway basically from the start, with the idea being that eventually you will not just be generating an image or a video, but rather an entire simulated reality in which you can explore. And it looks like Runway is taking their first step into it with the release of Game Worlds. Now, to be clear, this is much more text-based than, say, a modern first-person shooter. If you grew up in an era of rolling a dice across your kitchen table or being eaten by a crew, yeah, you definitely catch the vibe here. Now, it isn't entirely text-based, and we'll see later on, there's some pretty interesting areas to explore there. So kicking off, there are a number of pre-made games that you can try out down here. You can also create your own game. We'll definitely be going over that. In the meantime, let's just grab one of them. Let's just say Days Gone Dark.
Let's have a look.
So this is a bit of a zombie survival game. It's kind of awesome. If we hit play game here, we will be prompted with creating our character, maybe Tim. And then what's fun about it here is we can add in a reference. So popping in a photo of me, I've actually been prompted to ask what I'm like. I am a hardcore ex-special ops agent who just wants to live a Obviously, from there, our game begins. This one does look like it has kind of like a low poly stylization look going on with it. Instead of actually going through on this game, I'm going to hop over to another game. This one is The Last City of Ash, namely
face down in cold ash. The taste of sulfur.
That's crazy.
Another dreamer awakens. Tell me, Shadow Walker, do you remember the taste of blood?
So to be fair, that is not actually what Runway Games does. Instead, actually what we have is, again, an opening like this. It's really interesting, though, that if you look toward the top, not only do we have what time of day our game is taking place, but we have a health bar here. This is memories. I think this whole game is based around collecting memories as you are someone who has lost their memory. And then even an entire inventory system here. As you progress through the game, in this case, our Veiled Launcher, who we saw earlier, who we will later know as Maya, ends up handing us our Assassin's Blade. We +1 that into our inventory. Plus, similar money.
Yeah, but I don't think it lets you actually explore the world, as I understand. I think it's literally just giving you prompts and images about what's happening in updates, right? As I understand it, I think. But yeah, let's have a look.
So in this intro opening, it's like suggestions.
Yeah, it's more like, it seems like more like a halfway house, more like a book and a sort of images they give you rather than what Google is trying to do with Genie. It feels kind of like this is like a step on the way to what Google are trying to do with Genie. It's still very interesting, right? That you can put yourself essentially as a game character, and it's got all the things you need, and put other characters in there, and you can prompt it and tell you what you're going to do. Super, super interesting. But yeah, I think it's a bit of a it seems like it's like one step on the way to what Google are trying to do with Genie, which is interesting. And of course that makes sense as well, right? Because Runway are probably not going to have, at this stage, as I understand it, I don't think Runway have access to the kind of resources that you would need to do the sort of compute-intensive stuff that we've been talking about to actually be able to do that. But yeah, super interesting. Super, super interesting. Yeah, I think while we're on the subject of talking about compute power, it is worth diving a little bit into politics and talking a little bit about what NVIDIA are doing and what's going on with some of the export controls, and that affects two of the stories we've talked about: the DeepSeek version 1, the DeepSeek 3.1 upgrade, and also the compute power that we've talked about that these Google Genie needs. So So DeepSeek, interestingly, is trying to use Huawei's Ascend chips. So the market leader for chips at the moment, and these GPU chips and the things that you obviously need to run the models, is NVIDIA. I think we spent copious amounts of time about 18 months ago with people talking about their NVIDIA stock prices and they're going to invest in it. Sean, do you still have stock in NVIDIA? Did you sell it? Yeah. People keep selling it and it keeps going up and up and up and up. Yeah. Of course, this is a political issue. Taiwan is where the main factory is for the chips and for the silicon, and America wants to get access to all the H100s, and they put export controls on China having them. If China has access to the best chips, it means then China's AI can get ahead of the American AI, and it's politically sensitive. So DeepSeek, obviously being a Chinese model and coming out of China, have had to switch to other alternatives. There are export controls on some of the H100s and some of the big chips coming out of Taiwan. Obviously, there are ways around that. There are black markets going on, and there are people doing all kinds of little tricks. I think I heard for a long time that Chinese people were setting up companies in Singapore that was basically shell companies with Singapore people sending the chips on to China. So of course there were tricks that are going on, but in the main, officially, there's export controls on the chip. So DeepSeek officially has had to move to Hawaii, and they had to delay their model because of technical issues. So the Chinese AI companies reportedly delayed the launch of its newest AI model after a failed attempt to train it using chips from the domestic tech giant Huawei, which is interesting. And I think a few years ago there was an issue with Huawei phones. A lot of people had Huawei phones, and I think they were banned from being. They were I think either banned or you couldn't buy them anymore in Europe because of some of the issues with the technology. According to the Financial Times, Chinese regulators encouraged DeepSeek to switch from NVIDIA's leading chips to Huawei's Ascend processors after the release of the R1 model in January. And that plan ran into trouble. DeepSeek faced persistent technical issues with the Ascend chips while training its R2 model, the FT reports, and even the Huawei engineers on site. The team couldn't complete a successful training run. So these problems forced DeepSeek to fall back on NVIDIA chips for the compute-heavy training processes, and the delays pushed the model's launch from May and gave competitors a head start. As a workaround, DeepSeek now uses NVIDIA hardware to train its models, but relies on Huawei's Ascend chips for less demanding inference tasks. So industry sources told the FT that Chinese chips still lag behind NVIDIA in stability, connectivity, and software quality. So there's a kind of another story going on here about NVIDIA's dominance of the chip market and no one else really being able to compete, and what is China doing in response to that. And we've talked today a lot about DeepSeek and V3.1 and how it's a reasoning model and how it comes hot off the heels of what OpenAI has done. They could have had maybe another DeepSeek moment if earlier in the year, in May, for instance, they'd been able to bring out V2 of their reasoning model, but they were offset and delayed by the issue with the chips, and that plays into the wider China versus US sort of arms race that's going on with AI. So version 3.1, which is the model we were talking about earlier, was said to be trained on a special data type called UE8MO-F8P. And in a WeChat post, DeepSeek said this data type was designed for a next generation of domestically produced chips, which could be released soon. So it does sound like they're trying to distill some of their data to be able to train them on the domestic architecture. The move from a different format seems less about efficiency and more about future hardware compatibility. So it seems like they're having to basically change their entire business over to a different chip. Yeah. Does anyone want to chime in on the chips and Hawaii versus Huawei? Is it Hawaii? Huawei. I can never say that. Versus NVIDIA. Yeah, sure. Let's get Sean the mic. Yeah. Where's it gone? Yeah.
Okay, it is something to do with the way I hold it. I also read that DeepSeek was leaving China and they were trying to relocate to other parts of the world so that they could get access to.
Interesting. That's interesting. I wonder how far that plan has been stalled, both by China themselves and both by other countries. It'd be interesting to see if they do get off the ground. So, yeah, super interesting. Another upgrade I think is worth talking about that we haven't talked about is the upgrade of 11 Labs have decided to do music. So we've seen some of the music generators. We've seen sort of Suno come out and Udio, these big music generators. And one of the things about them is that they are all trained on copyrighted data. They're all being sued by a lot of the big music companies. 11 Labs have brought out a music generator that is entirely it's been trained on uncopyrighted data. So it's all been trained on licensed data, which is really interesting. And it's pretty good. It doesn't seem to affect the quality of it. So I've been creating jingles with it. So I'll show you how you use it actually. So it is an option in 11 Labs. So we'll go back to the. See if we can. Well, let's see if we can. No, we still can't start the Mirage 2. I know. 7 seconds. Okay, we can wait 7 seconds. 2 minutes. 59 seconds. How long can we wait? Yeah, keeps changing. Yeah, we'll wait. We can wait a minute. We can wait a minute to see if we can get access to. Yeah. Yeah. Very temperamental today, isn't it? Yeah. There you go. Yeah, just speak up. Yeah, just speak up, Sean. Yeah.
Okay. I also noticed that Microsoft Excel had been updated, so you can use Copilot in a cell of the spreadsheet.
Wow. Yeah.
Which is super cool. So it's like writing a formula when you're like equals and you want to do a sum, you go equals Copilot and you can
Did you see that Elon came out and he said we're making a new company, we're going macro hard against Microsoft? I mean, Microsoft is so far behind with some of their AI stuff, and the fact that they put that in there and everyone's like, yeah, it's really cool. I mean, we're dealing with them a lot at the moment with the consultation client that we have in Dubai. We're actually building them out an AI automation, and all of their systems are on Microsoft, which is pretty common for businesses. And so they're an absolute. Here we go. Here we go. Yeah. So we can move forward. So W, S, A, and D, I think, is what we. There we go. Here we go. Look at that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like a Sega Master System.
Yeah, it does, isn't it? Just a little bit. So I think we have to keep changing the camera angle. It's a bit annoying. It doesn't really seem to follow the camera around. But you can space, you can shift, you jump up and down. We can fight. We've got a little bit of a sword.
Not as good as Google.
No, it's nowhere near as Google as you can see, but I mean, it's a pretty good effort, I would say. So, again, this is the model that uses the 3D Gaussian splatting that we've talked about. So that's all the time that we've got on the server, which is not much at all. But you can get the general feel of it and the general idea of it. But remember, this is the model that uses the splatting technique, where it puts out sort of pixels in this kind of 3D space and sort of extrapolates from them. It's not using the auto-regressive neural networks where it builds a physics engine that Google's model is doing. My feeling is that Google DeepMind, those guys have got it under control, and that will probably be the way that wins out. But I mean, I don't know. I mean, maybe it will be like with the image generators. There's all different types of architecture, and they're still sort of competing. We have diffusion technology. We still have GAN, generative adversarial networks. We kind of don't really think about the technology. They just kind of exist there to use them. One hasn't really sort of won the day yet. But then again, just looking at it, it seems like the Google DeepMind's way is the way to go. But we haven't seen Google DeepMind. We've only seen demos of it. We haven't actually had a chance to play with it yet. But yeah, my overall sense is that I think within 6 months to a year that this is mainly what we're going to be talking about. I wonder how long the next GTA will take when this technology comes out. It's been 12 years since GTA 5 and GTA 6. So yeah, I mean, what a world it will be if you can make your own version of GTA. Maybe we'll make GTA Barley. I don't know. That'd be funny. Yeah, so yeah, I'll just finish the point about, I think we were talking about 11 Labs music before this came up. So, part of this whole vision of being able to create a world, being able to create films, being able to create things is 11 Labs music as well. I'm currently making an audio book of my book to put it on Spotify. I've made all the voices of all the different characters. There's about 30 different characters, and now 11 Labs has got music as well. You can add music to it as well, so you can prompt it because it's fully licensed as well. There's never going to be an issue with copywriting, and it's pretty good. And the way that it works is you make the song, and then you can prompt and you can select different versions of it. So we'll try and see if we can log in and get it up. We'll close Mirage 2 down.
Also, on the Grok 2.5
Yep.
open source, on the tweet it actually says the weight and the code.
Interesting. What I had read there was it was open weights, not everything was out there. There were some restrictions. So interesting. Okay, maybe I was wrong on that. Yeah. But yeah, it is on Hugging Face, so you can download the weights here. If you want to run it, I think you had to do some complicated stuff. You needed SLG project, and you needed to do something with Tensor. Whenever I see the word Tensor, even I just it's like no. So yeah, one of my tasks this week might actually be to try and run this on G-Core and get this up and running. So I'll feed back to you on how difficult it is to do. So let's get 11 Labs. That's what we're talking about. We'll end out with some 11 Labs music. Oh, will it let me? My payment has failed. Yeah, so the way it works is you describe your song and then you can prompt to change it. You can say, I don't want this, I want the intro, I want it without lyrics, I want lyrics with it. It's a bit different from the way Suno and Udio works, which more works with buttons. It's more variables and more controls. This is more open-ended, so the only buttons really are the length, which can be custom, and then the amount of variants that you want, whether you want 3 or 2 or 4. So yeah. What do we want to create to test it? I'm wondering. Maybe we want to make a little jingle for the AI founders meeting. Should we do it? Yeah, it will do. You can choose if you want lyrics or you don't want lyrics. You can make it and then you can say, actually, I don't want lyrics. So, for instance, this week I'm making a little bit of a jingle for the channel for Gcore, the news channel. So I made one with lyrics, and then the video editors wanted to sort of play it over when I'm giving the introduction. And I said, well, the lyrics don't really work. Can we do one without lyrics while I'm giving the introduction? And then maybe we make a little bit of a title sequence with VO3 with the version with lyrics. So very easy to just say, no, I don't want this and get rid of it. So, yeah. Yeah. I think Suno can generate lyrics. Yep. Yeah, Suno can generate lyrics. It could for a few months. What I don't think it can do is remove them if you want. So Suno's got a lot of interesting features. You can actually upload music and say, change this piece of music. I want like it to be in a rap or something. Yeah. I think this matches in terms of the quality, the output that you get, and it's been entirely trained on licensed data. So that's really its USP. So you'll never be an issue. It will never be an issue to upload this or to use it anywhere for commercial use. And of course, they're not being sued by every company under the sun, so they actually have money to invest in stuff. So it's kind of why I think we haven't seen any innovations from Suno or Udio, because they're just bogged down in lawsuits. And unlike OpenAI, they don't have the money to just pay them off. So it's really quite problematic. And as you know, right, the music companies are known for being litigious, so they're not gonna let this go, unfortunately. So 11 Labs have kind of come out of the bag and trumped this. So yeah, why don't we see if we can make up a jingle for the AI Founders event? Can you come up with a jingle for the AI Founders event at Bali, a weekly event at BWork, co-working space on Tuesdays, 7 p.m. in AI, and demo some products, interesting things.
Does it generate multiple or just one?
You press this button and it can give you a number of variations to choose from. So you can say you want 1, 2, 3, or 4, which is good, cool. So it's going off in parallel and doing that, but obviously it will cost you more credits. Why don't we talk about like how do we want it to sound? Should we have it jazzy? Has anyone got any suggestions? How should it be? Jazzy, rock, techno? Okay. Yeah, so you see this button here, so this says we can have it auto, so you can let the model decide, it'll be 30 seconds, a minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, or 4 minutes. So 4 minutes is pretty cool. So you probably wouldn't get the best output by doing that. You probably want to create a section and then prompt it to create more or do it. So style, techno, anything else, any specific instrument requests? Should we have a key change halfway through? Have a key change halfway through. And make it dramatic, make it catchy, what else could we do? A signature voice. Okay, yeah. So make it a female. Should we have a female voice? Yeah.
Could you name someone like
I think it will be restricted because it's trained on data. It won't let you do that. Suno and Udio, to be fair, won't do that as well. And if you try, they'll take it out of your prompt. So but you can work around it. Like on Suno and Udio, I think someone went to Claude or ChatGPT and they said, I want you to write me a prompt for ABBA without mentioning ABBA or for this specific song, and then you hear the output and it sounds exactly like an ABBA song, right? So we can make it catchy, make it the lead singer female, like mid-20s, country singer maybe, or yeah. That's going to be a bit of a weird mix if she's a country singer and she's like this techno. Maybe we'll have a techno background. All right, I think that's enough detail. Let's see what it comes up with. We'll give it 2 variations, maybe not 3. It is. So let's see what AI comes up with. So it's generating it. I really like the UX of Studios. I think it's not going to let me do this. I think I'm going to need to upgrade my. See if I can upgrade my payment. I'm sadly no. That is for another time. No, I don't think it's going to let me do it, unfortunately. It's asking me for verification and all kinds of things. No, it's not going to let me do that, unfortunately. I don't think we're going to get to sort that out. But let's just end by talking about maybe next week. Maybe what we'll do is we'll remember the prompt and we'll play it at next week's meetup. Let's do that. So we've had 11 Labs music, and also they also brought out an API for version 3 this week as well. So, but they've upgraded their voice model, so they're a lot more realistic, and you can actually prompt, I want this person to whisper, or this person to cry, or this person to be excited or angry. So that's in their API now as well. Just saying it wouldn't let me do the go through the billing. It wanted a verification code for 11 Labs. So next week we'll hear the output of this week's prompt. So let's summarize then what we've kind of learned in the meeting. So we've talked about open source news. We've talked about Grok and that being open source and what that means. We've talked about DeepSeek as well, DeepSeek version 3.1. And we've also talked about some of the challenges DeepSeek is having to actually scale and compete with some of the American models because of the import-export controls coming out of China, and they've had to relate to using the Huawei chips rather than the NVIDIA ones. And then the main focus of today's meeting has really been talking about these 3D generation models. So I've said that perhaps in a year this is going to likely be the technology like image and video generators. And we've talked about how some of this, the two different models that the companies are using to try to get to these real world models. One is using Google DeepMind is using physics, and is building a physics engine, and is trying to use neural networks and the classic transformer technology to try to solve the problem. And another one is using this sort of splatting technique, this 3D Gaussian, I believe it's called, technique. And we've had a little bit of a demo of Mirage 2, which is using this Gaussian technique, and we've sort of looked at some of the challenges that these models are going to encounter as well. Some of the huge obstacles that these guys in the research labs have actually got to overcome to be able to put these models out. So yeah, I hope you found today interesting. And of course, you're welcome to stick around at the end if you want to network and have a little bit of a chat. And I hope to see you next week. And there we go. Yeah, do you want to turn it off?